Hello everybody, how are you? Ah, good. Yeah, so I thought we could look at this. This is, you might have seen it, Constantin Stanislavski, An Actor Prepares. And I'm looking to do a series now about sort of trying to adapt some of these techniques for performing musicians. Just so that we may, so that we're kind of on the same page, with actors, that like the kind of preparation that actors put into their craft, so that we're sort of starting to see like the stage or the theatre, this hypothetical stage. We're starting to see that as being this sort of place which is like really respected, and that becomes almost like a shrine, but more sort of like our laboratory. That's where we explore, like a lot of these ideas, and I think the more we get into it, the more we're going to actually sort of express that sort of human condition. So in this first video, I'm sort of going through the first chapter, which now Stanislavski called it the first test, but I'm going to call this one sort of finding our place, or finding your place, something along those lines. So I've made a few notes because it's not immediately apparent, but we'll see where we're going. So it's going to ask you a few questions. First of all, what instrument or instruments do you play? What style or styles do you identify with the most? Because that might be reflected by the type of instrument that you play, obviously. An instrument could mean vocals as well. And who are your favourite players? Perhaps you find yourself just sort of drawn to, because you like a certain style, then you're looking for players within that style, or you may have started playing because of a certain player. So as a consequence of that, think about all the other instruments that you don't play. Why don't you play them? Is there something sort of like just down to time, or is there something that you don't like about those other instruments? Similarly, think about all the other styles that you're unaware of, that outside and beyond that little bubble that you or I are in, because invariably we are. There's going to be a whole multitude of other styles, either in existence or not ready yet. They're sort of like just somewhere out there, unspecified what they are, where they are. And this is it now, that once we realise that we are just like this little part of the much greater whole, there's a huge heritage waiting for us. Huge. So now the question is, how are we actually going to tap into that? How do we bring that about and put that into what we're doing? So now we've got to think about the stage. I mean, I have said a little bit about this at the start, but if you imagine like this stage, like a theatre somewhere, I'm not sure where, but particularly somewhere in the imagination, and think about all these great performances, whether it be music or drama, these epic performances by either master musicians or the great actors, the great opera singers, or dancers, I suppose, if you want to bring that side of it. Now, yes. So if you think about this theatre, that all these great performances are, if you imagine them being played out over and over again, in this imagined theatre somewhere, then somehow we should be able to tap into what they are, where they are, and then bringing them about. But first of all, we need to try and imagine those, try and put those in your mind. So we're almost like stepping out of this world into the other world, into the subconscious world. Okay, so the next question is like, who are your favourite actors or actresses? Ideally, like one or two, but you might be thinking of a few. I mean, like for me, I can think of something like Clint Eastwood. Most Clint Eastwood films I'm probably going to enjoy. Dame Judi Dench as well, because I know that like she's pretty much dedicated most of her life. Even if she's in her 80s, she's still a very good actress. The fact of being Dame, because of her contribution and all that. Sean Connery as well is another one. He's no longer with us now, but the thing about Sean was that everything he was in, he seemed to have that. He seemed to have kept his accent, and yet he was a really good actor. Whatever he was playing, he may have had this broad Scottish accent, but he was still a really good actor. So, so the next question I want to ask you is, what is it about those actors, say like a Judi Dench or a Sean Connery or even a Clint Eastwood, what is it about their performance? You could even think of something like Michael Caine or something like that. These ideas keep coming to you, but what is it about their performance which you think, yeah, that's a good that's a good performance, that is a good actor? What is it that encapsulates that? And then following from that kind of level of control or mastery of their art, if you then contrast that to like some of your favourite musicians, are those musicians using similar kinds of restraint or thought in what they're doing? Have they actually outlined or prepared what they're going to do for their performance? This is key, because like especially like like in, I don't know if you actually go to the theatre that often. I mean, it's been quite hard during the lockdown, but to actually see like a proper stage production of like a Hamlet or a Macbeth or Othello, I suppose. I'm going to get onto Othello in a moment, but to actually see that done well, you actually realise that these actors have reached that level of virtuosity, where they've reined in the performance, and they've taken that text and they've taken that next step, and they've actually had time to think and prepare, and they've rehearsed, and you'll see these reactions. They'll go from like vulnerability to rising anger, even, but even just turning on like that, and so you get this almost like unexpected, so you almost don't know what's coming next. Now, is there any way we can bring that out? Is there any way we can put that into what we're doing? And then suddenly we're actually starting to see beyond technique. We're not just playing fast scales anymore. We're not just playing heavy breakdown, down-tuned breakdowns, whatever. We're actually, even before we start playing, we're starting to think about, well, what is it we're trying to say? What is it we're trying to express here? Now, in Actor Prepares, the first chapter that discusses the director, this hypothetical director in here, ask the group, think of a play. Well, first of all, like, split up into partners. Think of your favourite play, and then act out a scene. and imagine it being performed on the stage, you know, where you got the lights and you got your costume and you got your makeup on, and how well do you think you can do it just on a run through? And that's quite a challenge, because in here, because I mean the way it's done in the form of like a diary. It's almost like a diary, or partly a bit like a novel as well, which is intriguing for a textbook. But the protagonist in here, he actually chooses Othello, and I think that's kind of one of Stanislavski. It's like, I think he's doing this as like almost like a trap for the reader, because like Othello is a really difficult play, especially in this day and age, because it has been construed as having perhaps some racist connotations. Depends how you read it, but you know, are those racist connotations projected onto that play, or were they actually inherent in the text? I mean, I'll post a link to there was a debate by the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they're actually discussing that. So you might enjoy that, but I'll post a link to that below. But essentially, Othello is a play about jealousy and the consequences of jealousy. Jealousy leading to anger and leading to revenge, violent revenge as well. And it revolves pretty much around four characters. That makes, you know, you got the main character who's like Othello, who's like he's a military general. Now in the text he's a Moor. That means like he's sort of African descent, Islamic as well. That has a bearing on contemporary interpretations. And there's his friend Iago, he's also in the military. And there's another friend called Cassio, like not Casio like the watches, but with a double S, Cassio. And Othello has promoted Cassio. And Iago feels jealous because he feels he should have got that promotion. So he starts getting jealous of what Cassio has achieved, because he doesn't think he's deserved that promotion. So then he starts hatching this plot, because Othello is married to Desdemona. You might have heard of that name before. And because Othello is, because it's like one of his main, well, you know, being in the military, you know, there's two sides of him. You know, like there's, first of all, you got the, you know, the man of honour, you know, the statesman and all that kind of thing. But then there's the other side of it, where he's in the military and he gives orders and he expects them to be obeyed. So he's, you know, he's a bit autocratic. He's perhaps even a bit vain, maybe even a little bit pompous. And so all these things start to generate this idea in Iago's mind that says, well, if I make him think that Desdemona is having an affair, especially with this Cassio chap, then I'll get my own back, you know. And so and the thing is that, like, what you have to ask now is whether Othello is the villain or whether Iago is the villain. And secondly, because it to be honest, I mean, cutting a long story short, it doesn't go well. It doesn't go very well at all. That all the main characters end up, you know, typical Shakespeare tragedy. All the main characters end up dead, and this is like as a consequence of this this mistrust, this you know, this revenge, jealousy, these strong. So I think what Stanislavski is getting into is, as an actor, how do you actually tap into those strong feelings without feeling them too much yourself? Or how do you actually learn to manage those feelings? Now, as musicians, that's very useful for us as well, because if we can have similar control, or can learn to understand where those feelings come from, or where those characterizations come from, then that should make our music a lot more human and a lot more accessible. I should also talk a little bit about the character of Desdemona as well, because there is a scene where she's talking with her lady in waiting. She's actually quite important. She's a she's like an aristocrat. So but she's talking with her lady in waiting, and she's talking about the idea of having an affair. She doesn't actually follow through on it, but she's saying, she's almost sort of like thinking, well, if she starts flirting with somebody else, it'll make Othello more keen on her. And you may have heard this kind of reasoning before, but of course that ends up being further from the truth, because Othello becomes violently jealous and ends up killing her, even though it's just been like a mild flirting, but he thinks she's actually has been having an affair with one of his friends. So yeah, so what I thought, so just to close, I mean, like, some of those ideas, I mean, like, first of all, I want to throw it out to you that take any of those characters, like Othello, Iago, like this manipulator, Desdemona, who's sort of quite vain but at the same time is fairly innocent, and this Cassio, who he's like he is innocent, but he's just a victim of circumstance. So just wanted to throw that out to you, just to see how you actually feel. You might also want to think about how like Othello has sort of influenced some more popular texts, like have you seen that film Mean Girls? There's a lot of Othello in that as well, because that's about like at high school somewhere. There's like the popular girls because they're pretty and everything, and then there's the other girls who aren't in that little clique, who and they sort of and then this new girl joins, who's basically like the Iago figure, and she engineers this plot to bring about the downfall of like the like this really popular girl. But again, it doesn't end well, and all the consequences of that will actually come out. Also, I don't know if you're a fan of like The Prisoner, the Patrick McGowan version. There's the episode Hammer into Anvil. It's one of my favourite episodes, that one, because number 6 gets his revenge on number 2. Number 2 is like the leader of like the village, and then number 6 is imprisoned in this village. And number 6, he hatches this plot to make number 2 think that there's a big conspiracy against him. And then that ends up with like number 2 having a breakdown. It's it's really well done, but of course like 6 is still a prisoner, and then that's his tragedy. So there's so that's the other thing to get across as well, is like if somebody engineers like a downfall of somebody like that, there is also their tragedy which doesn't become immediately apparent. Maybe like because I'm a big Benjamin Britten fan, as you probably know, like the Peter Grimes opera. I mean, that's about basically like Peter Grimes. He's on trial for murdering his apprentice, and he's acquitted. You're not completely sure of the circumstances, but the village, they're not sure. They still think he did it. They still think he was responsible. And again, it doesn't end well for everybody in those circumstances. So, but I mean, it was based on originally on a poem by George Crabbe, I think. But Britten extended it more, and he wrote some fantastic music for that, especially like the interludes, which are really inspirational if you get a chance to listen to those. So so like with some of those ideas, I just think that that might be a good like a good starting point, for us, of things to look at, so that we're not just we're not just caught up on scales or techniques and things like that. So so we'll do a little bit of playing, and then we'll call it. All right, thanks.